Welcome to Massive Passive Cash Flow, the podcast that guides professionals to financial prosperity. Join our community and let's start building your wealth. Here's your host, Gary Wilson.
Welcome back to the Massive Passive Cash Flow podcast. I'm Gary Wilson, your host, and I'm glad to have you back on the show. I appreciate you listening. Of course, we're on 30 different channels, including the one you're listening to. So if you haven't subscribed, please go ahead and do that. And without further ado, we got a great guest today, Jay Helms, all the way from Panhandle, Florida. He's going to talk about what he's doing in the world of real estate and investing. But first, Jay, first of all, just thank you for being here, man. I appreciate you being here,
Yeah, thank you for having me. And I meant to say earlier, thank you for rescheduling. I know we had a conflict, or I had to cancel on you last time, and you were quick to allow me to reschedule. So I appreciate that.
Yeah, no worries, man. Hey, life, busy people are busy for a reason, So
yeah.
So, hey, if you wouldn't mind, I know you have a really interesting lifestyle, but kind of fill us in a little bit about, how did you get to where you are now, and your children, what you guys do for fun and traveling around, all that kind of stuff. And I want people to hear this because it's actually pretty fascinating,
Yeah. So the most interesting thing about me actually is the way my wife and I met. We actually met as contestants on a reality TV show. Now, as far as reality TV shows go, the show was not very popular. It had one season. It aired on the Outdoor Channel. It was based in Costa Rica, where we got to do some of the most amazing fishing that I've ever been a part of, and she's ever been a part of. But I met her at the airport as we were boarding to go on this little adventure. Spent 6 weeks down there, came back, realized we couldn't live without one another. She eventually moved to where I was living and working at the time. She was finishing up school, and so I'm going to fast forward 15 years later. I think it's been 15 now. We've been married for, I got to get this right. We've been married for 10, and we've got 3 kids, boy, girl, 9, 6, and 4. And I was in corporate America. I was just trying to, grow and scale the corporate ladder. I was a principal at a very small IT company that kept getting acquired, and then we'd build that company up and it would get acquired again. And along the way, my wife and I, we started buying real estate and just buying, real small single family properties that we could afford through a HELOC that we used. And we did that for 6 years. And then we built up a nice little portfolio, nice little business. And then I got the call during COVID that I was getting laid off. And so I told and our kids at the time were 5, 3, and 1. So I, absorbed that conversation with my boss at the moment, and took me, 5-10 minutes to kind of get past the cold sweats, because I didn't see it coming. I was leading the sales team, and we were breaking through our quota every month for the last 6 months, or 4 out of the last 6 months, and things were looking up. But it happened, and she instantly said, "Well, great. Now we can travel like we've always been wanting to." Right. And I'm thinking, let's time out for a second. I just got a call. It was a low 6-figure income job.
Mm-hmm.
All of a sudden that money just went away. Right. And what I didn't realize is our rental portfolio, we weren't using any of that money to live off of. It was basically going back in the business, saving up for our next deposit or next transaction we're going to be a part of. And we'd use that money that way. But then when I got laid off, I was like, okay, we can comfortably. I finally warmed up to the idea that we could do this traveling thing, and we comfortably landed, without having to go back to the W-2 world. And ever since then, we have taken the summer. So we live in a vacation area, in Gulf Breeze, Florida, and so we converted our house to a B&B, and so when we're not here, it's rented out to guests, and it does really, really well. It pays. It just does really, really well. And so we don't necessarily like it during the tourist season here, because we get spoiled the other 8 months out of the year when You can walk into a restaurant and there is no wait at all, or you can go to the beach and you don't have to sit right on top of other people. So we've kind of become beach snobs, and so we kind of got used to that, and we don't like all the traffic that comes with tourist season. So we leave and go do whatever, and we'll take off and travel. It's averaged out about 6 months out of every year, and for the reason we homeschool our kids, so we don't have to worry about them missing any kind of school. And it's just, I never, when I got that call initially about, hey, we gotta lay you off, I wasn't thinking how great life could be afterwards. And here we are. And so that's the nutshell of how this is, how it's led to me talking to you, I guess.
Yeah. Well, that's amazing. I appreciate you sharing that. I know when the coronavirus hit and they started shutting things down, it affected a lot of people. We actually, in our business, we had already positioned everything on the platforms to be online. We were getting ready to shift to be online. And so that when Monday, March 16th, 2020, when the announcements started going out, all the big picture things, everything shutting down, and no in-person classes, which was what I was doing. I was traveling all over teaching in person, all over the U.S. and Canada. But I was ready to get off the road. And it was like probably one of the biggest blessings in my life. And I love traveling, believe me, but I was gone every single day, every single week. That's hard. Hard.
It can get old. And we've recognized that when we're gone about every 2 or 3 months, the kids start acting a little different. They start getting a little more homesick, especially when they get tired or hungry. The further we get into being, gone from here, they just start acting a little different. And so we trying to take notice of that. And so we'll come back here, recharge. Like we've been here for a few months, and we'll probably be here until spring break, get a good recharge. And then, matter of fact, we got to get planning on where we're going or what we're doing spring break wise, because we don't know. So but traveling's fun, but it can be exhausting, especially when you're doing it for somebody else and you're not, that somebody else in your case being who you're going to teach and whatnot. It's exhausting, and it gets not as fun real quick.
First for me, I was eating it up, man. I'm staying at Ritz-Carlton eating, I'd get a meal like three little scallops where I lived in Inglewood. I was over in Inglewood, Florida for a while, and up in a place called Pocosin, Virginia. It's known for its scallops, and we would get, big bunches up for just a few dollars. And here I'm at a Ritz-Carlton, and I said, "Oh, good, they got scallops." They brought the plate, $36 for three scallops. I'm like, that's an appetizer for me, man. I'm hungry,
that wouldn't have done it for me.
But what's interesting though is you have the opportunity to see the world, see the country, U.S. and Canada too, if you want to do that, and Mexico if you choose to do that easily without having to hop on a plane. Your kids get to see everything, and you're homeschooling them. And here's what I'm getting at with this is I've met several people who do the same thing. There's a wonderful group I was in for years called Go Abundance. There's a men's group and a women's group. Yep. And a lot of the guys I met, we called ourselves lone wolves. I mean, we were kind of out. We're nonconformists, we're, good guys, entrepreneurs, good family men, but I was darned if I was going to sit behind a desk in a corporate office for the rest of my life, but it also showed me that you can invest in real estate wherever you are, either physically there or invest back home where you come from. And the other thing is your children get to see this in action. They're not sitting in a public school classroom all day long, trying to focus on whatever the teacher's saying with all the nonsense going on. Sorry, teachers, I'm not knocking you. It's just it's not you, it's the system.
I wish some of those teachers would stand up against the system, though.
I know some that have, definitely. But I know people whose children. One guy, his one son had his first home in his name at 11 years old. The other one was 7 years old. Now, legally, they had to structure it so it was done correctly. But the 11-year-old, by the time he was 16, had written his first book, and his dad included them in everything that they did. The mom and dad. So let's talk about that. Let's move into the real estate. When you're are you investing more locally? Because you're in a great area. I mean, you're within an 8-hour drive of a lot of major population centers, and of course, you're in a destination area. People want to come
Yeah.
to Florida, But talk about that, but also investing if you've done it out of state, and if you don't mind, give us a little background there. That'd be awesome.
Yeah. Over the years, we've bought and sold properties and traded up, whatnot. This house I'm in is the only house that we own in Florida. And there's a couple of reasons for that. Number one, insurance costs down here are getting absolutely ridiculous. And I'm a conservative underwriter. So when I look at things, I'm shooting for the 1% rule, which is almost non-existent in today's market interest rates that we have to deal with. So we started looking elsewhere. What's that old saying I can't remember where this came from. But it was like, if it doesn't cash flow, let the grass grow, which basically just means go away. And so we started looking at other markets and found that in Mobile, Alabama, which is between here and Gulfport, Mississippi, we've had some luck in there and some tertiary markets around there. And then also getting connected with some guys who are doing some bigger syndications that, we I wouldn't say marry the syndicator, but we base our investing on those passive investments because of how the syndicator acts and how well we know them. I have a pretty strict rule about my partnership criteria, which is not talked a lot about in the world that we live in, but I've just developed a partnership criteria that's worked well for us, that I know the person in it is honest, ethical, noble. I get who they are. And then we've migrated to doing something which is even more passive in hard money and private money loans, which has been fun. We just really got into it this year, and it's been pretty amazing. So
well, let's talk about that. When you and your wife first got started out, most people just start off getting a few, like a place here and a place there, and over time you realize there's a lot of other ways to structure deals, and there's a lot of other exit strategies. In other words, instead of just doing traditional rentals or traditional flipping, you can do the short-term rentals like you probably do with your home there. I mean, a lot of people use Airbnb. Nothing wrong with that. But also midterm rentals like corporate housing, which is a traveling business person, traveling nurse that are there 3, 6, 9 months. And then a lot of people do get into either syndicating themselves, like they're the principal doing the syndications, or passively being part of other people's syndications. And now you can do fractional ownership. There's organizations that do that, which is really awesome. So there's a lot of alternatives. But what would you say after you got started in your first couple transactions? What was the next step in your evolution, strategy-wise?
So by nature, I'm growing out of this. Entrepreneurship kind of has a way of making you grow out of being an introvert, but I was definitely a propeller head. My bachelor's is in computer science, so I'm a technology geek, right? But I've been slowly growing out of that. But when we first started buying properties, I was not. We're talking 6 years ago. Very comfortable in where we were. Very comfortable with that check just coming in every month from the W-2, or every couple of weeks for the W-2. So we had bought a few properties, and in our first couple of years, and I was like, all right, we're kind of out of money. So what's the next step? And just consuming all the resources that are out there, very much like this podcast, it kept leading us to partnerships. You got to start being around the same people, or the right people and whatnot. And I started having conversations with guys that I was working with about, hey, this is what we've started doing. Have you thought about doing this? Because I knew they had to make similar, or probably had some fun setting aside that we could partner up on a deal if I found one. And nobody really wanted to take me up on it, right? And so we started, and again, being introverted, I was like, I don't want to go to the local RIA for a couple of reasons. Number one, it's 45 minutes in one direction. I didn't want to leave my pregnant wife home because she was having some complications. Like when we started figuring out, okay, this is how we're going to grow. I was like, I'm not going to leave her home by herself, and we don't have family close by or whatnot. And so I really started focusing on, or actually I launched the W2 Capitalist, right? And it was at the time, we were Zooming before anybody knew really what Zoom was. And we were having virtual meetings, just investors around the country who very much like me, introverted, didn't want to travel, but wanted to talk to other investors. And so that's how, I eventually incorporated that in 2020. And, but it really comes down to this. And I'm stealing this from Hal Elrod, the author of The Miracle Morning, right? Because he puts it in this way.
Earlier years.
What's that?
He was in GoBundance with me back in like 2015. He was one of the first.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So he has this exercise, and it's called growth friends versus maintenance relationships. And I use it all the time. Are you familiar with it?
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Go ahead and explain this, everybody. Yeah.
So basically, what I do now, because I now realize this, right, is I sit down and folks come to me and talk to me, and they're struggling with their growth. They maybe purchased a couple of properties, like, but I want to go bigger, right? Or I want to add to what we already had, but I just keep hitting my head against this brick wall. And they're like, how do I do this? Mm-hmm. I was like, all right, here's what we're just going to do this exercise. And if you're listening or watching, you can do this. It's very easy. You just grab a blank sheet of paper. At the very top, you're going to make 2 columns, right? Left-hand side column is going to be titled Growth Friends. Right-hand side column is going to be called Maintenance Relationships. And then what you're going to do is you get out your phone, right? Mm-hmm. And you scroll through your most recent phone calls or your most recent text, right? And just do the top 25 or 30 of both of those calls and texts. And if you talked about building wealth, growing your portfolio, how to, increase wealth for you and your family during that conversation or during that text message, then that person's name goes into the growth friends column. Mm-hmm. And for the sake of this argument, we're going to say everybody else goes into maintenance relationships. I don't care if it's your mom, your brother, your sister, family, friend, relative, whatever the case is, lifelong friend. If you did not talk to them about investing, growing your net worth, building wealth for you and your family, they go into maintenance relationships. A huge majority, I was going to say 90%. I don't know the actual number. Almost everybody that I talk to and we go through this exercise, can you guess which column has more names in it than the other one?
Well, I hate to say it, because I think for most people, it's going to be the maintenance relationships.
Exactly.
Unfortunately, yeah. Did you know that you can participate in class every Monday? We call it Monday Night Live, 7 p.m. Eastern, with me and dozens of other investor agents from around the country, in fact, the world. Every Monday, totally free. No selling, no recruiting, just straight up education on anything and everything in real estate. And we have a lot of good guests coming on once or twice a month, bringing in expertise on subjects like how to buy a house with crypto. Okay. How about them apples? What about AI? How's AI affecting our business? How about the metaverse, blockchain processing? We're already using it in title work. So come on to Monday Night Live. Be ready to take notes and ask questions because it's live and engaging, and you get to participate by asking questions and meeting others. So we'll see you there. Go to realestateWithGaryWilson.com. Click on the resource tab, drop down, and you'll see Monday Night Live. And in there, you can see one of the most recent classes. But more importantly, you can register for class as many as you want going up to like the end of the year, I believe. So in any case, do that. We'll see you on Monday Night Live. Look forward to meeting you in person. Take care.
Yeah. So what we figured out, and I didn't know how to articulate this until I stole it from Hal, is back when we had closed a couple of properties, we knew we wanted to grow because we were starting to see the light. We're like, this doesn't cost us a lot of time to manage these properties, and we're getting, $600 checks every month from the three that we had. It's pretty cool. That's pretty cool. So we looked around. I was like, well, who are we talking to? We didn't have anybody in the growth friends column. They were all maintenance relationships, right? Yep. And so just over time, we started working on those and starting, looking for people who were willing to have the conversation. And it started with maintenance relationships. I'm like, hey, we've started investing in real estate. Here's what we're doing. Have you ever thought about doing that? Or, and eventually you get to this point in the conversation where you're like, who do you know that invests in real estate? Do you mind making a referral so I can have a chat with that person? I'd like to pick their brain. And you just continuously do this over and over and over again. Well, pretty soon when you go through that exercise again, your maintenance relationship column is going to be really, really light. It's only going to be the people that really, very close friends and family. Yeah. Right.
Yep.
And it's just one of these natural progressions that happens overnight. Does not happen overnight. Right. There are ways to expedite it where you join a community or a local RIA, or, and the community could be a virtual one like the W2 Capitalist, but it doesn't happen. It doesn't happen overnight. Right. And it takes some time. So that was the biggest transition shift for us, is just beginning to have those conversations. And then, as being a lone wolf, kind of like you were, you're talking about earlier, I started opening up to the idea of partnerships, right? Yep. Like, I mean, there's that saying that the only ship that doesn't sail is a partnership. So I want to stay away from those if I can, and I don't want to get involved in, essentially married to somebody I don't really know or whatever. And so I stayed away from them for a while. But then eventually we had a couple that were going really, really well, got up the courage to take action to partner with some folks. They went extremely well on financial side. The relationship side, they didn't go so well, but they were really good investments. And I just learned, and over time I developed this criteria that we have for partnerships when we look at partnering with folks, because probably like you, Gary, my inbox and my messenger apps are inundated with, hey, would you like to partner on this deal? And I had to figure out a way to sift through those with people who were really serious and somebody who I'd really want to work with. Right. So we came up with this criteria, and ever since we've been using that and continuously adopt it, we haven't had any trouble. Returns been great. Relationships have been even better. And it's just one of those things where it goes back to this whole thing about building wealth and building a portfolio. It is a marathon. It is not a sprint. I struggle with the guys who talk about closing thousands of deals in a year or a very short amount of time. I'm like, you're not talking to me. I don't buy into that. Most people, and I'm talking like the busy parent, right? Got a couple of kids. They can handle doing 1 or 2 transactions a year without going insane or sacrificing any kind of family time at home, right?
Right.
It only takes, somewhere between 5 and 15 of those to have you set, right? And most people can do that within 3 to 5 years. And so it's I get annoyed when I hear people talk about they've got thousands of units in their portfolio or whatever. I'm like, no, you don't. You may have invested in the syndication where the syndication had 300 doors, but you invested as a 1% partner. So you don't have 300 doors. You have, what is that? 3? And so, but anyway, I'm going to get off on a tangent and talk about things that really annoy me. But back to your question is, the thing that shifted is looking at who we were spending our time with and what kind of conversations we were having, and then working on partnerships that we weren't afraid to enter into. Yeah.
I love it. I've had partnerships too, and literally 50-50, 50% were less than what I was hoping for, to put it, be politically correct about it. And I had to buy them out. And the other 50% worked out really well. I mean, one guy in particular, by the way, my degree is in computer science too.
Oh, really? Okay.
And the partner, and he was an accountant. So what's funny is you would think we'd be a lot alike personality-wise, and we were in certain ways, but in really important ways, we were really different. We excellent, complementing each other perfectly. And the cool thing was I'm not saying everybody who's an accountant or a computer science, graduate has the utmost honor and integrity, but that partnership we had, man, we knew what each other was capable of and what we could count on from each other, what to expect from each other. And we knew beyond a shadow of a doubt, each person was going to deliver on their end. and
Yeah.
we way more than exceeded those expectations. And we're just partnering up on something again now, and it's been easily 20-year relationship,
Yeah.
and he's a real good guy. His name's Vince, by the way. So if you ever come across an accountant named Vince, he's probably pretty good. But
That's good.
but in any case, this is why I asked the question is as you progress in life, that's really not so much to do with aging, although the longer you live, the more you're going to age. It really has to do with lifestyle and your relationships that are more important. So you'll learn over time that you want to spend more of your time with the people you love, the
Yeah.
closest people, your family, closest friends. In order to do that, you need to have the business background, income, revenue, wealth to support that type of a lifestyle. So like I've been, retired from the corporate world it was actually 20 years this August 13th. I retired in 2003.
Congratulations. Yeah.
Thanks. Yeah. And I'm the one in the family that travels to see all the other family members because they're all working, right?
Yeah.
They can't get away. They get 2 to 3 weeks vacation. I'm like, now they think I'm always on vacation. I'm like, I don't really call it vacation. I don't even call the work I do work. It's a direct reflection of who I am internally. And I love what I do. I still get excited today just as much as I did yesterday and 10 years ago. It's hard to describe to people, but when you're doing the thing that brings you the most fulfillment, and it usually has to do with serving others, you'll find yourself having plenty of time to do the things you want to do and the financial backing to make sure it can all happen. So here's what I'm getting at. In order for all that to happen, your investing style may start to change.
Oh, yeah.
So for me, I love the fact that I can have fractional ownership of a property now. Years ago, of course, we had timeshare, but that's different. Timeshare is a time increment. Fractional ownership, you actually own a portion of the property, a statistical portion, but you don't have responsibility for maintenance and management and leases and rentals and collecting and all that kind of stuff. They have a company that does that, and there's sites you can go to and you can check out their stats. You can look at their reviews. You can see the returns, and it's different than a REIT. See, a REIT's like it is a mutual fund technically. They raise funds from investors, and then they take those funds and then they acquire the properties. So there's one layer of separation between you, the investor, and the property. With fractional ownership, it's direct ownership. It's just a small fraction. So in any case, that's an alternative for people that want the better returns, but don't want to take the time to deal with all the management. Because in real estate, remember, acquiring the property, playing offense is only part of the game. The other half of the game is playing defense.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of investors make the mistake of not building in pro forma for playing defense, which involves time, energy, and money. Management,
right?
Dealing with the vacancies and things like that. You have to account for that when you purchase the property. And here's where a lot of mistakes are made is, and I did this in early days too. I bought a property saying, well, I'm going to not pay for property management because I'm going to do all that stuff myself. And I did. But what I didn't account for was the fact that me playing a property management role is separate than the role I play as the owner. My role as the owner is to make a profit and collect it, put that money in my bank account. My role as a property manager is to manage a property for profitability, and I should get paid a salary for that. I didn't do that. So later on, I realized even when I buy a property that I'm going to manage myself, I still will add in 10% in the pro forma to account for it. So I pay myself, but more importantly, I knew eventually I'd hand that off. And I did. I built a property management company, and all that money that I accounted for in the pro forma, the 10%, paid for property management. And then Mr. Entrepreneur here took that and leveraged it to offer it to other investors around the area. And that grew into a big business. But in any case, people aren't here to hear me. They already know my story. So, but I like the fact that you've discovered partnerships. Now, the things you're doing now, when you're doing syndications too, or what's the nature, like how you're structuring the deals and the financing and the exit strategies and things like that? Anything unique and different, or any surprises there? As you grew.
Yeah, so we've done a little bit of everything. Have never wholesaled or fixed or flipped anything. My wife and I, we've done a couple of 2 live-in flips, and they are a lot easier when you don't have kids in the picture.
Oh, yeah.
they get to learn, they get to help participate, but things just happen a little slower than expectations may be set for. But we've on the buy and hold, we've got short-term rental, single family, or at least we've either done or hold, but short-term rental, single family, small multifamily. We've been a GP in a multifamily syndication, an LP on several multifamily syndications, joint venture with some partners on a mid-size multifamily. And then recently we started getting into hard money and private money loans just this year. And that's really opened my eyes to what can, just the various ways that you can make money through real estate. And they're all different degrees of passivity, right? So is that a word, or did I just make that up? Anyway, I think you know what I mean. There's different passive, they're passive in different natures. And so, like the hard money or private money lending, super passive. Don't have to do really anything except make sure documents are signed and initial money is wired. And then you sit back and collect a check, right?
Yep.
You get really high interest rates, but you don't get to participate in any of the equity split, right? So then if you, and we're lending on single family fix and flips, right?
Yeah.
But if you compare, and we're getting, somewhere between 12 and 13% interest for that money. But if you compare that same dollar where we're going to invest in a multifamily, then we're only going to look at something that has an 8% preferred return. So there's really like no guarantee. We're not in first lien position where in the hard money lending, we are in first lien position. And then there is the potential for an equity split afterwards, right? So whenever the property is dissolved or whatnot. And so, but, and it goes back to who the syndicator is putting the deal, who's the principal at it, and how much we trust them, how much the property actually is going to do what the pro forma says it's going to do. Is that going to be reality, right? So you get in the two different worlds, and I like both of them. I mean, I don't have a preference over one over the other. I just want the best return possible, right?
Yeah. Yep, you got it. Well, the fact that you have diversified your strategies is a big step. Because what you learn is the economy is always going to be changing. It's either growing, either expanding or contracting. No economy ever stays stagnant. If it does, it's not stagnant for very long. And you don't want it being stagnant anyways. You need movement in the economy, right? Whether it's up or down, people can make money in both markets. And what's cool about having multiple strategies is you realize you could always invest in any market. There's no, we could go into a giant recession like we did 12, 13 years ago, or even a bigger depression like we did almost 100 years ago. But people still made money. Wealth transferred from one hand to the next.
Yeah.
And real estate's no different. Real estate is a physical, tangible, income-producing asset that doesn't go away. It just changes hands, So I know we're getting short on time here, but I want you to, if you don't mind, talk a little bit about the book you wrote and also the website. So the book, I believe, is called Make an Offer. Is that right?
Yeah, it's Make an Offer. Subtitle is Breakthrough Analysis Paralysis to gain the confidence you need to be a successful real estate investor. And, I wrote it. It's a parable, but at the end of each chapter, and it's a quick read. If you're an Audible person, it's like a 2.5 hour Audible, really quick read. Inspired by Bob Berg and The Go-Giver. So it's kind of that type format if you've read that one. But at the end of each chapter, there are actionable steps, and it's geared toward the newbie investor, right? The aspiring investor who really needs to get that first deal done. And quite frankly, I would love to give every member of your audience a free copy of it. So we'll figure out we'll get the link. The link is makeanofferbook.com. And I'll make sure you got the right URL for that, because there might be a little tricky piece. But to answer your question is, I wrote it. as you read through it or listen to it, you're going to quickly realize that it really is just my wife and I. It's our story and things that we were dealing with when we were starting out and how we were able to overcome that. There are some fictional characters that were based off of several people who were in my life at that time, and the names were changed to protect the innocent, so but yeah, it's making an offer. It's available on Amazon, but if you want a free copy, I'll ship anybody one in the US.
Very good. Well, we'll put it in the show notes. You'll definitely get some takers.
Okay.
We do have an audience, and we're now past the 30 different countries, but 95% are here in the U.S. and then Canada next, and then the rest are scattered around the world. But also the website w2capitalist.com. I was looking at it, and I think everybody that's listening, you should go visit that site w2capitalist.com. There's some great information there and a way you can participate and work with Jay. So tell, if you don't mind, I know we're probably way past our half hour, but tell us about the website, man. I mean, it's pretty cool the way you structured it and the way people can engage. I think it's one of the best ones I've seen.
Well, I appreciate that. That comes from the old technology days, and I do get some questions like, who did your website for you? And I was like, well, I kind of did that. I reluctantly tell them or expose my geekiness when it comes to that. But back to the growth, friends, and maintenance relationships exercise, we've just, the more and more we kind of get down this road, what I've found is the more humble and more ethical and trustworthy investors, they always want to give back, right? And they always want to make sure that they can help other people. And and they all tend to kind of gravitate back to this pivotal moment in their investing career, and it kind of took off and they kind of helped. So that's what we're doing with the W2 Capitalists is we're targeting helping those busy parents who they've closed at least one property. And sorry, newbies, if if you're an aspiring investor, I will give you a free copy of the book, but you got to close a property before you can kind of come into our community and be a part of our program. But it's one of those things where, that pivotal moment I was talking about earlier, where we had closed 3 properties, we knew we wanted to grow. We didn't have anybody to talk to, right? And so we didn't have, our growth friends list was very, very short. I think it was 0 actually.
Yeah.
And so basically, if you've ever been to a stadium, right, any kind of football or baseball game, doesn't really matter, hockey, you can stand, you want something for a concession stand, you can go and you can stand in line at the concession stand, right? Which is what we did back, in year 2, year 3, when we said, okay, we got to scale. Or you can go to the front of the line and say, hey, I'm willing to pay for the person in front of me and all their food if I can just order with you. And then that way you're back in your seat and you're enjoying the game. So basically the W2 Capitalist community is a streamlined and way for folks who don't have a growth friends list to get injected into a growth friends list. And they can know that everybody's a parent, their spouse is on board with investing, and they've at least closed a property and focused on buy and hold.
Yeah. Well, I love the whole concept. You're tied into Hal Elrod, who was, when I first met him, he was just a year or 2 after his car accident. And he was still kind of, the way he was moving, you could see the guy was definitely went through some restructuring, in a big way. And then, just a couple of years ago, he had fortunately had leukemia. And I'm thinking, holy crap, how much can this guy go through, Well, he bounces back, and that zest for life and, his willingness to share with others is just, there's no way to put a value on that because it's incalculable. And I've met so many people over the years that are reading his books and following his programs. And I'm one of the lucky few that actually get to know him in person. So I like that you're using that, and like you said, the growth friends philosophy, and it's not anything negative. I know there's Robert Kiyosaki fans out there, and I am too. I got to also spend time with Robert Kiyosaki in person years ago, and he would tell you, hey, when you grow as a person, you're going to have to grow as a person before you can grow financially. The two go hand in hand. You can't have one without the other. He said, you're going to start leaving people behind. And it's not a mean thing. It's just a natural thing. It just happens. and you still love them. They're still your friends. But the way Hal does it, it's a little bit more, I guess we should say, user friendly and compassionate, and
Yeah. And somebody said earlier is where you start building that growth friends list is the people that you know, right? And say, hey, I'm focused on growing wealth for my family, and I believe real estate investing is the way to do it. And essentially, you're inviting them, hey, come along with me on this ride, right? Most people, if you're like me, you would find out your closest friends are going to look at you like you're crazy, and they're not going to do it.
Right.
But then you're going to fast forward 5-10 years down the road, and they're going to be like, now, how did you do this?
Yeah.
Like, why didn't, and you may have to remind them, because they may say, well, why didn't you invite us to go alone? I did. I was so frustrated. I felt like I was going it alone. So it definitely does happen.
Yeah. Well, I tell you what, I really appreciate you being on. I think I speak for a lot of people that when I say that, and for you listening, please leave a review. I mean, you got a lot of gold nuggets today on this one with Jay Helms, and you can also get his book. You can also go to his website. And if you don't have people in your circle of friends and family that are doing way better than you, at least in financial terms, take advantage of this opportunity. Be part of a group of people who are just like you, that are looking for others to hang around who have similar ambitions for personal and financial growth. Because you can't, again, money, sort of like any other, like alcohol and drugs, and I'm not equating the two or the three, but it will only amplify who you are as a person. So if you're just a big old jerk, more money is just going to make you a bigger jerk. But if you're a good-hearted person and you love people and you like serving people and helping them grow, you're going to have way, way more than you could ever possibly imagine. So keep that in mind. You can accomplish that by going to the website w2capitalist.com. So, but when you're online, leave a review for the podcast, guys, because man, that's what makes the podcast world go around. Jay and I aren't getting paid for this. It's indirect. There's fulfillment when we serve and teach others. So, and you'll hopefully experience the same thing for yourself. Hopefully you'll do a podcast one day and you'll have Jay and I on your podcast, but go ahead and do that. And the last thing is visit globalinvestoragent.com. Grab yourself a trained investor agent. These are certified investor agents in 38 states now. We just started the team 3 years ago. I had the podcast 2 years before they even started the team. The team has taken off like we invented pizza and beer. I'm telling you, because it works. Yeah, and if you are an agent, I know what the market's doing. Believe me, we're in it. Not time to panic. It's time to prepare. And just look at Jay. Imagine you had 5 J's that were your clients, and you're an investor. You know how to work with investors. You know the terminology, methodology. They're going to work with. They're not going to work with anybody else because there's very few of us out there. So what I'm saying is go to the globalinvestoragent.com if you are an agent. Click on the Learn More button, see how to make this part of your model so you can invest yourself. It's the fastest, easiest way to do it. So Jay, man, thanks again for doing this. I look forward to hopefully meeting you and your awesome family one day, maybe out on the road when you're traveling around showing them Yosemite and Yellowstone and Mount Rushmore, all the cool places this country has to offer,
Yeah. Absolutely. Thank you, Gary. Thank you for having me.
You're welcome. Everybody take care of yourselves. God bless you and your families. And we'll see you on the next Massive Passive Cashflow podcast.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Massive Passive Cashflow. Be sure to go to realestatewithgarywilson.com to join our community and start building wealth today.